to order. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none, we will declare the agenda as approved. And are there any announcements from members of council? I just want to say it's Nurse Appreciation Week this week. And so I just want to send a huge thank you to all the nurses, retired nurses, nursing students, just everyone in and around that profession for all that they do anytime, not just during the days of COVID. So a big thank you to our nursing community. Next item is we have the minutes of April 27th, 2020 council meeting there. Any errors or omissions? No, hearing none, we will declare those approved, and we're a couple minutes early for going into our public hearing, so I'll just probably just remind the public that we're going into a public hearing. When the public hearing is done, the time for to receive questions and comments from the public kind of ends when the hearing is over. So the hearing kind of closes that that opportunity down. So we're going to move now into the public hearing and go through that, and then we'll return to this. So why doesn't everyone just exit this meeting and go to the other tab, and we'll see you there. Circulated, and I will turn this over to our planning team.
Perfect, thanks. I'm just going to get my presentation up. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Great. So staff received an application to rezone 12 Kensington Court from single unit residential, or R1, to 2 unit residential, R2. And this would require a map amendment to the zoning map of the land use bylaw. The property owners are looking to convert the existing basement into a second dwelling unit. The basement already has 1 bedroom, 1 3-piece bathroom, and a full-size egress door, and no changes are planned for the exterior of the building to accommodate it. So the surrounding zoning of the area is single unit residential, or R1, as shown on the map in the lightest beige there. And there is also 2 unit residential just at the top of the courts. There's comprehensive residential, agriculture, and park zones nearby as well, and the surrounding uses are predominantly single unit dwellings. So the future land use map of the municipal planning strategy shows the subject property and the surrounding area designated as low density residential with comprehensive residential and open space nearby. and the low density residential designation is reserved for both single unit and 2-unit residential dwellings. A rezoning is required because the R1 zone doesn't permit 2-unit dwellings unless it's through a residential conversion. However, the conversion is only for buildings constructed prior to August 27th, 1975, and a building permit was issued for this building in 2001. And as shown on the chart, the only differences in the two zones is the permission for the 2-unit dwellings as of right in the R2 zone, and the ability to convert up to 3 units rather than 2 units in the R2 zone for buildings built prior to 1975, though. A public participation meeting was held on January 29th, and 5 members of the public attended, and comments were received by email and through the development applications webpage as well. Similarly to other homes in the neighborhood, there is a restrictive covenant on the property, and much of the discussion focused on this. There were concerns at the meeting that the covenant restricted the land use to only single unit dwellings. However, the covenant does not specify this, but the town also doesn't have a role or authority in regulating the restrictive covenants. The rest of the discussion focused on setting precedent for higher density, the intention of the developer, the purpose of rezoning in general, increased traffic, and Airbnbs. In order to consider the application for rezoning, staff reviewed the policies of the MPS. This included the policies for residential development. And in summary, the property is located in the low density residential designation of the future land use map, which is reserved for single and 2-unit residential development. Single and 2-unit dwellings are viewed as compatible and comparable to each other, and a 2-unit dwelling provides a different housing option in a predominantly single-unit neighborhood. So this review also included policy IM6 of the municipal planning strategy, and most of this policy was met. The proposed use is compatible with the adjacent properties. Based on a 2018 sanitary stormwater master plan, new developments in town are not permitted to increase the frequency or volume of overflows of the wastewater system. Therefore, offsetting flows would be seen as necessary for this development based on the addition of 1 unit. The road network is adequate to support the change. There are no known environmental contamination or constraints, and any costs associated with any necessary changes would be the developer's responsibility. So IM6, E, and P were not met in regards to wastewater capacity, and those are E, the adequacy of sanitary services, water services, and stormwater management services, and P, the financial ability of the town to absorb any costs relating to the proposal. In summary, the R1 and R2 zones are both part of the low density residential designation of the future land use map, and that includes 12 Kensington Court. This designation is reserved for single unit, 2-unit, and semi-detached residential development, as well as 3-unit residential development in certain conditions. Therefore, the light densification of the additional unit at the subject property is compatible with the intent of the designation that it falls under, and the use is also compatible with the surrounding uses. The sections of IM6 that were not met are related to wastewater. Engineering staff have commented that if the rezoning is approved, offsetting would be necessary. It has been determined, however, that there is a legislative gap and the town cannot manage wastewater overflows on a particular property or caused by that property with an offsetting agreement as the sole instrument. Since the offsetting agreement is not a proper instrument, council can consider the land use bylaw amendment as there has been regard given to policy IM6. And although this rezoning would allow for an increase to the number of units, it's only increasing by 1 dwelling unit, and the land use bylaw states that if the building on a property in the R1 zone was constructed prior to 1975, the increase from 1 to 2 units would be permitted as of right. So another single unit residential building in the R1 zone that was constructed prior to 1975 may be permitted to convert to a 2-unit dwelling as of right. And in addition, without a rezoning, the current property owners could convert the basement into an additional living area with the amenities of a separate unit, as long as they didn't fully separate the 2 living areas into independent dwelling units. These changes would be permitted as of right and would allow additional people to occupy the space. However, if the property owners were to do this, there is the future risk that the property would change hands and the new property owner might separate the units fully without knowing they couldn't, and this could create 2 separate units that would not be permitted in the R1 zone and would not likely be up to building code. So we want to avoid that. And I wanted to add a timeline. So the first reading of this application was held on March 23rd, and a public hearing was scheduled for April 27th. A memo went to council on April 7th, though, to postpone the public hearing, and that was due to the requirements to conduct virtual meetings and also changes to newspaper advertising that was put in place. And on April 27th, another report for direction went to council regarding the gap that exists regarding the management of wastewater flows through offsetting agreements. So at this meeting, council rescinded part of the March 23rd motion that had required an offsetting agreement to be put in place. So it's now recommended that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater give second and final consideration to the proposed map amendments of the land use bylaw to rezone 12 Kensington Court from single unit residential to 2 unit residential as contained in Appendix A of the report.
Okay. Is that it, Mackenzie?
That's it.
Okay, perfect. So now we go down. Is there a presentation by the developer?
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Casper at 12 Kensington Court. No, thank you for calling me the developer. I feel so
fancy, very fancy title.
Thank you very much. No, I think Mackenzie's presentation speaks for itself. We're in a position where our parents are now retiring, our aunts, our uncles. We have a whole family unit that I have one group that's all gone off to university and an older family. Now we want to be able to support all of that, especially in times like these. I mean, if COVID's shown me anything, that it's more important now to be able to handle these things. It will be just myself and my wife and our youngest, and we've got a fairly large home that's really well set up for it. So we thought it was a wonderful idea, and thank you all for being here. That's really it. Happy to answer any questions, but yeah, developer finished.
Thank you, Michael. We'll move on to the next section, which is comments by the public. I believe we have one member of the public present, and so I want to open that up and give that individual the opportunity to speak if they wish.
Perfect, thank you. My name is Craig McDonald. I'm at 158 Mayfair Drive. I know with this type of technology, sometimes we can have some bandwidth issues. So if you can't hear me speak, just give me a wave and then I'll know to pause and start again. All right. So my concern and the concerns of some of my neighbors as well, but I'll just speak for myself right now, is the issue with this rezoning from R1 to R2. I understand the reasoning behind it, but my main concern is that it's going to give the possibility to any owner, whether it be current or future owner of the home, to have a 2-unit rental available. You know, what I'm hearing is they want to have a place for family to be able to live and stay. And I can understand that. I don't think anybody on this street or around is going to have an issue with family living in the home, right? We actually see a lot of that on our street and in the community. For me, because I already see it in a lot of already existing R1s, I have a hard time justifying the additional cost to go to an R2 and what that entails. It seems to me that it would be quite an expense if you want to have a complete separation, to have the permits, to have the firewalls, to have all of those extra things in place, when if I were to think of it myself, the easier route would be to get some extra gyprock and a couple doors, right? And then, you know, have your upstairs and have your downstairs separated. And I think that would, you know, be a much easier solution than to worry about some of the things that Mackenzie was talking about in regards to the IM6, the P&E not being met with the wastewater flows and those type of things. I think the potential is we are creating an issue that we don't have an answer for. And it seems from Mackenzie's presentation, the town doesn't have a plan put in place for wastewater. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I heard it. So therein lies the issue is, you know, I would think that it would be easier to stop the process and keep the current zoning as opposed to finding out that this becomes an issue and have to go back, because I don't think that would happen going back, right? So my ask from town council is that you reject the proposal on the rezoning of 12 Kensington Court. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Craig. So I'll now open up the floor to members of council. Just reminding council, you can ask staff questions or you can ask questions of the people who spoke.
If I may, just quickly,
Yep.
we had an email as well from someone, so I just wanted to from a member of the public who couldn't attend the meeting. So I just wanted.
Okay. Yes. Go ahead, please.
So just in summary, they are residents of the area. They disagree with the rezoning proposal to enable the conversion, as they appreciate the area being single dwelling units or single unit dwellings, and that it would open up the possibility for more such requests and would change the current living landscape.
Okay. Thank you, Mackenzie. Members of council, questions?
So it's Bill McGinnis here.
Go ahead, Bill.
I guess the elephant in the room for me would be if the property ever became a non-owner occupied property, both units were rented. That, when it's not owner occupied, that takes away to some degree the integrity of the community. So I think that might be the big issue that residents up there would be concerned about. I could be wrong. I'd be open to any comments.
So I guess that sounds like a question maybe to staff. There's nothing that could prevent that. Is that your question, Councilor McGinnis?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. There's nothing that could prevent that. So if they chose to not live there anymore or sell, that would be available for just a rental property, as would any property around town of that manner.
My question is just looking at the zoning map. So the house next to 12 Kensington Court can do this as of right, correct? Because they're on the other side because they're in the other zone.
Yeah. So I'll just trying to share my screen.
I just asked that as I hear concerns about changing the neighborhood. There are some of these in the neighborhood currently, right at the top there.
If you see just at the top of each of the courts, all of these ones here in that kind of darker beige are currently R2, and that continues down that way as well. And then these ones are R1.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from councillors?
Yeah, if I may, Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Does this mean that all houses in R1 can have those suites?
What suite, like an additional unit?
Yeah.
Or?
Are we setting a precedent?
Yeah.
Are we setting
So
a
are we
precedent?
setting a precedent? So in
Right. So I'll bring up that comparison. I'll leave the presentation on. I'll bring up the comparison chart again. So you can see on here that any R1 zoned property permitted as of right is just single unit dwellings. But if you go down to permitted with conditions, you'll see that single unit dwellings that are in the R1 zone, if they were built prior to August 27th, 1975, they can convert to 2 units as of right. And then in the R2 zone, that's when those 2 unit dwellings are permitted as of right. And you can actually go up to 3 units if it was built prior to 1975. But
I guess, Councillor Greaves, I don't want to speak for you, but I guess probably what he's asking is this is a newer home, so it's not prior to 1975. So is the precedent set that going forward, what if this were to pass, that all R1 single unit residential homes built after 1975 are suddenly permitted to have another unit in them?
Exactly.
Right. No. So this is just for 12 Kensington Court. So any R1 zone does have the ability to go through a rezoning like they're choosing to do, but they have to go through the rezoning process. They'd have to go through this process if they wanted a 2 unit dwelling.
Okay, thank you. So another question?
Yes.
So in this particular case, the gentleman or the family wants to create a mother-in-law or a granny suite in the basement. And I get that, but to the other gentleman's point, Craig's, I can see this really starting to change neighborhoods if it was to happen too often. That, it doubles up the number of cars, it doubles up the number of people, and it just changes the flavor of a neighborhood. So as a homeowner, I can see where there'd be some concerns. Just a comment.
Thank you, Councillor Graves. Other members of council with comments or questions?
David Andrew. Go ahead.
Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Oh, okay, thank you. So Mackenzie, what's the logic in having those top rows of houses, let's say, or lots scheduled as R2? Why was that done? Do we know?
So that was done in, well, this is a zoning map from 2014. I actually don't know what they were before then, in the previous zoning bylaw, which was from earlier. I think it was just an idea to have it mixed, and I think there was the intent to have similarly comparable units in the same area. Jessica, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, any more details.
No, I don't. I also wasn't here at the time when they were considering that, so I'd have to look up if the zoning had changed at all between the previous bylaw and now. But just to say that both R1 and R2 zones are considered low density residential in our future land use and in our planning documents.
Okay, so there's no planning theory behind this kind of thing, this look and feel, I guess?
I think there is in a sense. So our municipal planning strategy is based on the smart growth principle, and that focuses on a lot of different things, but one of those is mixed use in a sense. So whereas you wouldn't get the same mixed use or density as you would downtown with buildings that have a mixed use, ideally you do want to see mixes of uses in a neighborhood. So that's just one of the principles of smart growth. So I think it would fit in with that.
Yeah, and just to add to that, one of the objectives of the planning strategy is to provide for a range of housing options. So, having, granny suite, as you called it, Councillor Graves, but having a range of options, including rental as well as home ownership in communities is, through the planning documents, is a desired.
Councillor Thorburn, was that you that had the next question?
Yeah, really, Mackenzie, how many units are we talking in on that road, on that side? Is it 3 or 4? I can't really tell. How many units on that street on the opposite side was zoned R1?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Do you mean in the cul-de-sac, Councillor Thorburn?
Yes. In the cul-de-sac, how many homes are zone 1 now?
Oh, I see. So in Kensington Court, there is 4 that are zoned R1 and 2 that are zoned R2, and it's the same for each of those courts. And then some right on Mayfair as well.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? Any other questions for any of the presenters from council?
Jennifer here.
Yes, go ahead.
May.
Yep. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Mayor Mitchell, may I comment?
Yep.
Sorry, I'm breaking up a little bit, so I'm not hearing you very well. I just wanted to make a comment about how it's really been encouraged for people to age in place, that we're often battling the isolation with seniors in Rome, Nova Scotia, the affordability of living in the town of Bridgewater or anywhere really, and densifying the population in Bridgewater. And I think this really supports all of those things and supports a lot of what we're planning towards. We certainly understand protecting the integrity of your neighborhood, but I don't think that this deviates from the current intent in the neighborhood. So I think this is a really great development that has a lot of great potential for developing our housing stock in Bridgewater.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion?
Just a comment.
Yes.
So I'm not worried about this particular development. I'm worried what happens when the house sells. That's my concern. This particular project to me sounds perfect. It solves a problem. It helps a family, but eventually this family is going to leave, and then and we don't know the intentions of the new owners, and that's the concern that I have.
No, point taken, Councillor Graves. Yep.
So,
yeah, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
So perhaps a question for the applicant and or Mackenzie. So why go down this path if this is technically allowed in an R1 zone without the development agreement, correct?
It is and it isn't. So they could have a living area. So they already have like a bathroom, bedroom. They could have everything they need, but they can't physically separate it. And so that's a personal choice. But they wouldn't be able to have a door. They wouldn't be able to block off the stairs.
Okay.
Jennifer, again, if I may.
Go ahead.
Just in response to Councillor Graves' comments, sold and somebody else coming in, certainly understand that it could end up being owned by someone who lives in one and rents one, but there's still a lot of potential there. It could be a family looking into home ownership, and the best way for them to do that is to have a rental unit and have some with some risk, there is a lot of opportunity to opening up this property.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McDonald. Before I ask for the question, anyone else? Is someone prepared to make a motion?
I can, Your Worship, if you want.
Thank you.
I would move that Council for the Town of Bridgewater give second and final consideration to the proposed map amendments of the land use bylaw to rezone 12 Kingston Court from a single unit residential R1 to a 2-unit residential R2 as contained in Appendix A of document 20-01 OD.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Tanner.
I'll second. It's Jennifer.
She can.
Deputy Mayor Tanner seconded. Further discussion? We've had quite a discussion.
Your Worship, yes, you can hear me.
Yes.
Your Worship, I'll not be supporting the motion for the reasons I stated. The current development is excellent, and I understand what they're trying to do, and I support that. My problem is if and when this property changes hands, becomes a non-owner occupied property, that potential is there. I see it in the neighborhood I live right now, and it's not a pretty picture. And the two properties I can point out to you, that they're not owner occupied and they are turning into first-rate slums. And it's unfortunate. And I'm not saying that will happen here, but the potential is there. So I'm not in favor of this, so I will not be supporting it.
Thank you. I'll add my thoughts, and while I understand both sides. For me, there's the R2 zone, which is right next door, and so you already have this capability. The other is, and I understand Councillor McGuinness's concerns, but you can have a non-owner occupied unit that's single family. So there's nothing preventing anyone in any zone from being an absentee landlord, if you will. I also agree with Councillor McDonald's comments of aging in place, and if it becomes a starter home for somebody and their only way to manage that is to have an income property. I said, this is not a bad thing. And again, respecting that right next door, they could do this as of right. So to me, it's not a big deviation from what is currently in place. I don't see a mass change in the neighborhood from allowing one, because we're not setting the precedent. This is still case by case, and we just don't see a lot of these in this zone. So for that reason, recognizing both sides, and again, valid concerns on both sides, but at this time I will be supporting it just because I do feel it. I don't think it'll damage the neighborhood, the beauty of that area of town for sure. So we have a mover, we have a seconder. Ready for the question? Question is being called. We'll go around again. Councillor McGuinness, yay or nay? Councillor Frazier?
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn?
Yay.
Councillor McDonald?
Yay.
Councillor Graves?
Yay.
Was that yay or nay?
Nay.
Nay,
Sorry.
okay. Deputy Mayor Tanner?
Yay.
And I'm in favor. So this is passed. And so I will adjourn the public hearing, and then we'll go back to, so you have to leave this call and go back to our regular meeting. So we'll see everybody in a couple of seconds on the other side.
We have
Thank
to
you.
re-sign in?
Yeah. Application for development agreement for 493 King Street. And I'll hand that over to our planning team, community development team.
Okay. No.
Who's taking, there we go.
Yeah, it's Mackenzie.
Okay.
This one is a little bit long. I will prep you with that. It's thorough, but okay. Sorry, my mouse is shaking on the screen. So staff received an application for a development agreement at 493 King Street. And the application is to construct a mixed-use multi-unit residential and commercial development at the corner of Phoenix and King Streets, where the old Bank of Montreal was. Property is zoned as historic downtown commercial, or C1. The future land use map of the municipal planning strategy designates it as downtown commercial. The surrounding zoning is C1 with park across the street and institutional, restricted commercial and downtown residential nearby. And the surrounding uses are retail, office, restaurant, microbrewery and lounge, and residential. So the applicant intends to construct a 19-unit residential development with ground floor commercial. As shown in this rendering, the building would be 6 stories in height. It would incorporate the existing 2-story brick building and have 4 additional stories. The existing second story would be converted into residential units, and it would just be the bottom that's commercial. And the intent is to provide a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units, and the 5th floor units would be 2 stories. So this is a view of the rendering from the Phoenix Street side. And there is a proposed addition to the back of the existing building, as you can see here, which would place the building 5 feet from the rear lot line. On this addition, there would be a roof deck with access for all residents. And at the bottom, there would be a landscaped courtyard and a second entrance to the residential units. The design would emphasize the prominence of the corner building with a bit of an angle, as you can see here on the top 4 stories. So this development requires a development agreement, and the following few slides are a summary of its content. And unless otherwise included in the development agreement, the land use bylaw will apply. The permitted use would be a multi-unit residential building to a maximum of 19 dwelling units, with ground floor frontage occupied by a commercial use, with more than 50% of the ground floor area used for commercial purposes. The massing and exterior design of the building would be in substantive accordance with the elevation drawings. This is an example of one of the elevation drawings, again from the Phoenix Street side. There would be a distinct top story with a different color cladding. The building would be no more than 6 stories. There would be a 4-foot step back at the base of the 3rd story here. The historic character of the existing 2-story building would be maintained, and the cladding of the addition would be wooden clapboard or shingles. As for parking, there will be no fewer than 8 bicycle spaces on the property, and they would be located near the rear entrance in the landscaped courtyard. There's no room for vehicular parking on the property, so it would be off-street parking on another property, and no set number of spaces is included in the development agreement. The development agreement stipulates that a fence or adequate vegetation would be required at the rear of the building, and this is to provide a buffer to the adjacent single-unit residential property. Amenity space is required for multi-unit residential buildings, and for this development, a minimum of 1,300 square feet is required, including individual balconies and a communal rooftop patio. The land use bylaw requires more amenity space for as-of-right developments. However, that doesn't have to be directly adhered to for a DA. And due to the existing building footprint, commercial space that will be located below, and the nearby park, less would be required for this development. For solid waste, it was actually written incorrectly in the report, but it should say that facilities for the storage of solid waste shall provide visual separation from adjacent residential development and public areas. Also, stormwater runoff shall be equal to or less than pre-development stormwater peak runoff flows, and sanitary sewer services shall be developed and implemented based on the wastewater study that was received from the consultant. A public participation meeting was held on November 20th, 2019. 7 members of the public attended, and the main concerns were around parking, proximity to and effect on the adjacent residential dwelling, the effect of construction in the area, and the maintenance of the existing 2-story building. The town's policy was analyzed to ensure that the development is supported. There are overarching policies in the municipal planning strategy, specific policies for general development, residential development, commercial development, built heritage, and development agreements, and also the downtown and waterfront master plan that are relevant. And these are all captured in the following slides. So I've broken it down into 3 kind of themes. So one related to building, one with compatibility of the development, and one about enhancing the surrounding environment. So the municipal planning strategy supports improving the design and appearance of Bridgewater's built form, protecting the historic downtown, and preserving the built heritage. The existing 2-story building of this development is from the early 1900s, and the original facade would be maintained to protect the built heritage, and the additional stories would be built with a compatible design. The additional stories will be guided by the King Street architectural controls. The additional stories allow for an increase in housing options in town and adds more residential units directly downtown. A mix of housing options, mixed uses, and density is encouraged on King Street. Currently, there's some residential and mixed use right on the street, but much of the residential is on adjacent streets. So the land use bylaw requires different amounts of amenity space depending on the amount of bedrooms in the units. So for this development, just over 3,000 square feet of amenity space would be required based on the land use bylaw. But since this doesn't have to be strictly adhered to for a development agreement, a minimum of 1,300 square feet comprised of 3 individual balconies and the communal rooftop patio would be required for this development. And this variance is supported through policy because the building is being constructed on an existing building, which provides physical limitations. The building also takes up the majority of the lot. There's 3,000 square feet of commercial space in the ground floor of the building, and there's a public park directly across the street. So this results both in the provision of private amenity space, but also allows the residents to utilize what's in the neighborhood already. And the development falls within the King Street architectural control area. And since it's located in the C1 zone abutting King Street, it's also guided by the urban design requirements. So the King Street architectural controls are for buildings on King Street built prior to 1920. The architectural controls do not have to be strictly adhered to for development agreements, but it's important to take into consideration their overall intent. So firstly, the main building will have to maintain the pre-1920s architectural style. The controls say that there can be no increase to the height of the main building. However, a development agreement is a negotiation, and also the MPS states that there's no limit to height on King Street for King Street buildings. And the nature of this development required an increase in height. This is also supported in the aim to bring density and mixed use to the downtown core. The controls also say that any additions shall be designed to match the existing building. In regards to cladding, the developer would not be required to match the existing building because it's brick. So rather, they are required to use wooden clapboard or shingles to complement it. The development agreement also requires substantive accordance to the elevation drawings, so details like window and door locations would be addressed. And the urban design requirements will also be used as a guideline, and many requirements are actually already covered because of the existing building. An architecturally distinct base and top story will be required because it's required for buildings over 2 stories. It also says that buildings that are 5 stories must have a step back of a minimum of 8 feet from the front facade at the base of the 4th story. And for this development, it would be at the base of the 3rd story, and it will actually be 4 feet on the front and side facades rather than just the front because it's a corner lot. Architectural detailing will be required and already exists at the base of the 3rd story, and this is to reinforce the established roof line along the street. And design elements that emphasize the importance of the corner on the streetscape are required, as I mentioned, including that angle that the developer has set on the corner of the top 4 stories. So compatibility of the development can be measured in different ways, and the MPS supports mixing compatible land uses and minimizing negative impacts. The proposed use is compatible with surrounding uses, as there is currently a mix of residential, commercial, and park space nearby. And the C1 zone is meant to accommodate a mix of retail, professional, and service-related business with complementary residential. So this allows people to work, live, and partake in recreational activities in their neighborhood. There are no property line setbacks required for the C1 zone, and this is to help increase density and build an engaging streetscape. And a landscaping plan will not be required because due to the existing building footprint, there's little room for any landscaping, but buffering is required at the back of the property, as mentioned, to minimize the negative impacts to the single unit dwelling that's behind it. So this massing image shows the height compared to the adjacent buildings. This would be the tallest building in Bridgewater, but there are 5-story buildings around town, and there are 3 and 4 stories nearby on King Street and Pleasant Street. This building would be 68 feet high, which is 12 feet or approximately 1 story higher than what is permitted as of right in the C1 zone on a corner. As mentioned, though, there is no height limit in the C1 zone through a development agreement. It is based on compatibility. A building of 6 stories is supported by the intent of council policies, planning documents, and overall council objectives, and height is only one way to measure compatibility. It's important to promote an inviting and comfortable experience when walking along the street, which is why the setback is required for the upper levels. The rear rooftop patio would also reduce the height in the back. And a shadow study was completed to understand some of the impacts of the 6th story on the surrounding area. So the greatest impact of shading from the additional stories is on King Street, directly in front of the building and also alongside the front of the adjacent building. The shadow will extend approximately 7 feet further into the street, as you can see here. However, the existing shadow already does cover the sidewalk. This is an example of 12 p.m. in the spring and fall equinox. This shows shadows at 5 p.m., so going on the other side. And the existing building and the building at 32 Pleasant Street cast shadows on Phoenix Street now. And with the addition, they will just connect in the middle to create one shadow that extends a little bit further onto the building and the adjacent sidewalk. And this shadow extends along the front, no further across King Street than it does already with the existing building, but it does connect with the shadow of the other building there. So compatibility of the natural environment is taken into account with developments, and the proposed use does not pose significant risk of environmental damage as long as sound engineering and construction practices are followed. The development is in the newly upgraded section of King Street, and King Street is an arterial road which is adequate to serve any additional vehicular and pedestrian traffic from this development. A wastewater study was done and is referenced in the DA. Upgrades will be made to make sure the increase in wastewater flow is offset. The impact on the surrounding environment and the town in general is important to consider with any development, and the MPS supports enhancing the town's role as a regional employment and service center, promotes compact commercial development, and aims to foster attractive commercial development. The Downtown and Waterfront Master Plan discusses the importance of balancing heritage preservation with new development, and says that vehicles are inefficient users of land and are incompatible in great numbers with vibrant downtowns. The plan encourages a reduction or elimination of parking requirements downtown, promotes the creation of medium to high density housing within walking distance of downtown, and recommends that residential development on King Street occurs through the redevelopment of existing parcels or through the addition of extra units. There are many benefits to a mixed-use development downtown, including economic benefits. It brings in use into a vacant building that was previously not contributing to the street and can now help activate it. It activates a vacant commercial space that was previously creating a gap in the ground floor fabric of the downtown core. It can invite people to spend more time on the street because it makes it seem like they're welcome to stay when there's a use involved. And residential development downtown brings people in close proximity to goods and services, encouraging the use of these services without having to make a planned trip to be in the area. And the addition of stories increases the amount of residential that can be directly on King Street. Infill development improves the layout of the streetscape, making it more appealing to pedestrians, and people-oriented streets encourage business activity. Mixed-use developments can provide a residential use in an area where residential is lacking, while still promoting a commercial use downtown. And a mixed-use building of multiple stories can accommodate more in a limited amount of space. And by adding to a compact urban form, it can also help utilize existing services. The town has a variety of plans that encourage walking, rolling, and public transit over taking personal vehicles. Active transportation is key to supporting a vibrant downtown, and there's less wear and tear on infrastructure. Having residential and commercial uses in the same area helps to further promote active transportation in town. The historic downtown is not conducive to off-street parking, nor is the subject property. So off-street parking would be required in the development agreement, and a written notice of a shared parking arrangement would be required. A minimum number of parking spaces was not specified, and this is supported in policy through the prioritization and support of active modes. A development can dramatically affect the public streetscape in positive and negative ways, and the development agreement and the town's design requirements help to manage the effect of the building design. The downtown environment can be positively supported by the development, as already mentioned, including enhancing the pedestrian experience of the street. And it can also bring what's called eyes on the street, which is a term that means there are people in the area at all times. So safety and liveliness of an area can be improved when there's a mix of uses that occur at different times of the day. So in summary, the town's policy does support this development. So staff recommend that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater give first consideration to the development agreement to permit a mixed-use multi-unit residential and commercial building as contained in Appendix A for 493 King Street and schedule a public hearing during the regularly scheduled council meeting on June 8, 2020 at 6 p.m. Thanks.
Great. Thank you for that very detailed presentation. And I have to say that shadow feature thing where you showed, that's pretty cool. To be able to show that, because I know that that's a question quite often asked when there's buildings that go up higher. So it was really kind of cool to see that perspective. Questions from members of council? We've heard this one a few times, but
I have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the building is the tallest building in Bridgewater. So does the fire service will have full access to the building in terms of fire control, so the top floors?
Yeah. So they were asked during the analysis, and they have no problem with it. Phoenix Street is a little bit steep, but they wouldn't have a problem reaching it. And the building, I think they intend for it to be sprinkled.
And can I ask a second question?
Yes, go ahead.
It's in regards to an elevator. Is there going to be an elevator in a six-story building?
That hasn't been decided yet. So in their plans, they don't have one, the ones that we saw. And that's one reason that in the development agreement, we specified up to a maximum of 19 units, because they might have to reduce it if they wanted an elevator. So I think they were looking at the pros and cons of that. And it would also be looked at very in detail by the building inspector when the time came to get permits and finalize those.
Great, thank you.
And it's 6 stories, but the 5th and 6th story are units that are together, right? So you have a 2-floor.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Just wanted to clarify that. Questions from other members of council? Yep. Is that somebody? Like I said, I can't wait to meet in person. Is someone prepared to make a motion?
I will, David.
Yes, thank you.
I move the Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater give first consideration to the development agreement to permit a mixed-use, multi-unit residential and commercial building as contained in Appendix A of document 19-140A for 493 King Street and schedule a public hearing during the regularly scheduled council meeting on June 8th, 2020.
Thank you. Seconded by?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Graves. Further discussion? Question being called. I'll go around the room again. Councillor McGuinness?
Yay.
Councillor Frazier?
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn?
Yay.
Councillor McDonald?
Yay.
Councillor Graves?
Yay.
Deputy Mayor Tanner?
Yay.
Myself, I am in favor. Unanimously approved. Thank you. Look forward to this going to the June 8th meeting. Thank you, Ms. Childs, for very detailed presentation. Well done. Our next item is down to correspondence for action. South Shore Fieldhouse Society and HB Studio Sports Center request for support. So in there, they're looking for either financial support or some help in finding some financial support. Yes, go ahead,
Yeah.
Amy.
I did advise the society that undoubtedly council would want to see some support for the request. So they have indicated they've applied for a number of the federal
programs that have become available to nonprofit organizations and businesses. At the time of receiving the request, they hadn't heard back whether or not they were going to be successful in receiving any, but they would provide, once they had their year-end financial statements done, and a better idea of where they stand with respects to the applications they've made, then they would be providing some information to us to help support the request.
So really, at this point, doesn't that kind of limit our response to we will help you find sources of funding, because they don't really have the information we need in order to provide funding?
Yeah, and in terms of like all of the funds, the opportunities that are available federally and provincially because of COVID-19, they're easily accessible. That information on the webpage, they're aware of those. Okay. And in terms of the exact amount, because I did ask that question as well, it was kind of open-ended in terms of what type of financial assistance, the amount are you looking for? So those are all things I think that we would need additional information on before council would be able to make a decision on an amount, if any.
So right now, it seems like it's more accurately put under correspondence for information, just because we're waiting for.
Yep, I can reinforce with them that we're waiting for the information prior to making a decision.
Unless council feels differently, it seems like we're still waiting for some information. Questions from anyone?
Just one, Tammy, did they give you a timeline on when they would have their financial statements wrapped up?
I don't recall right offhand when they said that was done. I think they were meeting virtually soon, so it should be soon. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yes, David, I know the Legion, we've applied for a couple of grants because we're non-for-profit too. And I think there's actually 3 or 4 programs that they can qualify for, but we qualified as soon as we could, and we haven't heard anything back yet. So we're waiting as well.
Okay. That's good to know, though. So I guess maybe let's circle back to this in a future meeting, Tammy, if that's okay, after we get a little bit more information on really specifically what they were looking for, hopefully after they've qualified for some things and started to receive some financials.
Yep.
Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Hearing no. Okay, perfect. We'll go down to reports and recommendations. So budget impacts, COVID-19. I can't wait till till COVID-19 is not written on our agenda anywhere. So I'll turn that over to the CAO, and then I guess some finance staff are with us. So welcome, and the floor is yours.
Okay. So the April 27th council meeting, council approved the operating and capital budget for 2020-21. And at that time, we advised council that undoubtedly we would have to make some adjustments to the budget to reflect the impacts of COVID-19 on our organization. And so what we've done is we've taken a look at what the next 6 months could potentially look at. One of the challenges that we have is everybody is kind of guessing in terms of how long how long will be in the social distancing requirements. What's the phase-in plan for reopening things? All those things impact businesses as well as the town in terms of our organization. So we've made an assumption that we're looking at the first 6 months of the fiscal year in terms of business not being quite as normal as it usually is. And what does that mean in terms of revenue impacts for the town? So we talked to you about the implications perhaps for tax payments, and we're looking at that separately under a financing program for the taxpayer. So this is about what's that non-tax revenue look like. So that would be things like parking revenue, transit fees, program registration fees. We have deed transfer tax, interest off our cash that we have in the bank, or interest off taxes owing that we would normally have as well. So we've given you what we feel the next 60 days looks like. Kevin kind of did a deep dive into our revenue lines to take a look at that. And the big I guess wild card in here is deed transfer tax. So we're assuming with deed transfer tax that we're looking at a 50% reduction for the next 6 months. And then after that, it's anybody's guess right now, but we're assuming that we would go back up to normal in terms of property transactions. So deed transfer tax happens when property sells, and there's a tax applied to the sale price. And so that has a value over the next 6 months of the fiscal year of $225,000. And then you can see the rest are not as big as that, obviously, but transit's in there, no fees, assuming no fees, as we have the social distancing requirements in place. Field use fees, if the sports fields don't open up to organized sports, we won't be seeing the rentals there. Park rentals, fire hall rentals, parking meter revenue, we making the assumption that we're going to continue as we are right now and have none. Police court fines would kind of follow behind that in terms of SOTs for parking fines. Summer registration, we're assuming that the summer programming with the social distancing won't be able to continue as normal. So we'd lose our program registration fees there. There's going to be some expenses dropped on the other side, but $28,000 there. Same with the spring registration, and winter and fall will likely be impacted as well. So we've got our numbers in there for that. The swimming pool is one where you're going to be asked to make a decision, if not tonight, very shortly, about what we're going to do with the pool. And again, without knowing that phase-in plan, it's difficult for us to really say whether or not the pool can stay open or not. But assuming the social separation or distancing requirements are still in play, it's going to be a challenge. And this assumes that the pool will not be open. So we would have a sponsorship agreement that we'd be looking at, perhaps extending, so we'd lose that revenue. And then we'd lose the rental and user fee revenues as well. The rest are smaller. Police private functions of $18,000. That's when the police are contracted to do private functions. Now, assuming those are all social in nature, whether it's events or that type of thing, there will be an offsetting expense because they're just charging out the time. And Fresh Air Films, that would be not proceeding. There's an offsetting expense for that. And Canada Day, the committee's made a decision not to proceed, so we would lose some of the revenue that we get in for that, but there's expenses on the other side of that as well. All in all, when you add in the interest income off of cash that would have been in the bank from taxes coming in, or interest on taxes unpaid, we're looking at $542,100 in non-tax revenue. So that's stuff that we don't get through the tax rate. It comes in other ways. So then we took a look at our budget and said, if we're gonna, this is assuming 6 months. If restrictions are tight beyond 6 months, then we'll have to relook at this, but this is our best guess right now. And then in terms of how do we offset that loss in revenue, we looked at our budget. And again, the same difficulties there in terms of expenditures as revenue, we're guessing, in terms of how long we're going to be in this situation. But we're assuming 6 months. So when we look at what are the options to offset that loss in revenue, we've come up with around $538,200, and that's you could say death by 1,000 cuts, but it's a lot of small things that add up to that number. So LCLC Capital, we're suggesting you could fund more from operating reserve than you are. So we were paying for most of our capital through just through the operating budget. This we could look at reserve. The energy management program, we had that as an addition, and that is that contract with Efficiency Nova Scotia. It's up in October for a decision about renewal. And so we're saying you may decide not to extend that, and that's about $8,600. Postage machine, we could delay buying that by a year. The 4th floor renos, that's a nice to have, but we don't need it. Park facility signs, same thing. Woodland Gardens, there is some trail work, we could postpone that. Carpet on the stairs, I think we could probably go another year. It's getting warm, but we could live without it. Planning, in total, 27,000 reduction. So you'll see professional development's been reduced in most budgets, and that's just the fact that everything's canceled. So that we're not traveling anywhere, meetings, those types of things, courses, seminars aren't occurring. So you see that the travel is also reflected too. There's a reduction in travel accounts. Planning had students that they would have normally funded. We got some grants to offset 100% of that, so we're reducing salaries there. And then just some small miscellaneous stuff. In recreation, it's mainly reduction in programming. So when we lose the revenue, we're going to lose, the expenses go down as well because we're not offering the programming in the traditional way. There's a supplementary report that will show you what staff is proposing for recreation programming this year. The pool, around 59,000, I believe, to have it operate for the full year. So there's around 2,000 left for just minor maintenance stuff, leaving the ability to reduce expenses by 57,000. That assumes the pool would not open, and that would be the result of COVID-19 restrictions. Transit, 3,700, and that's assuming that we keep the reduced hours for the first 3 months. So at the end of June, we go back to our normal operating hours. If you reduce it for the full 6 months, then that just gets multiplied by 2. So we have some small stuff like event control and in-kind stuff that we would do for events. Assuming those aren't going to happen, those would be reduced. The fire inspector's salary, that's not a COVID-19 related reduction. That is a leave of absence, so that's happening regardless. It's being reduced by 38,000. Fuel's down. Council expenses, so this is just a result of the fact that your travel, your conferences, all those things are canceled this year. The smart cities, that was an oversight in the policy because you're looking at your remuneration and reviewing that, so that would come out. That was a temporary measure. Admin professional development is down again, a result of things being canceled. The FCM convention canceled, so that can come out. Finance professional development as well. Canada Day, there's 30,000 that can come out because that is canceled. We're suggesting we leave 3,000 in, which would enable us to do some online celebration stuff. As I mentioned, police private functions, 18,000. There's an offsetting revenue amount. Group benefit holiday, well, there's the ability to look at our premiums are in surplus in terms of our reserve, and there's the ability to look at providing a holiday there, and the employer has a share of that, so that's 22,000. Christmas on La Have, we don't know, but the assumption here is that we're not going to be able to have large gatherings like that in December. And if it comes out, then that's 16,800, and we're suggesting we leave 5,300 in for decorations. That's so that we can still decorate, but the festival part of it would be postponed. Our weekly park events for June and July and August, 5,000, assuming that we won't be able to have the gatherings in the park. Fresh air films, again, there's an offsetting revenue. And then there's the internal control reviews that we've been working on. We could delay that by a year. And that brings you to 458,200. The next line is seasonal work. And as I advised council, when we had a delay and all parks were closed, everything was kind of shut right down, that we were not recalling seasonal staff when we normally would because of that. Parks are starting to reopen. If we split public works crews into 2, and we did that so that we didn't have all our crew working at the same time. If anyone got sick, it could compromise the whole crew, and they're essential workers. So we couldn't have all of them out self-isolating for 14 days. It's too risky. They do sewer backs up, water line breaks, all those things that people expect to be taken care of when it happens. So we split them in half. So now we have one half working in parks and one half doing public works. So we could delay seasonal work. There isn't an impact to do that, and we'll talk about that. But if we did 8 weeks, that's around 80,000. So that brings us to 538,200. With that comes service level decreases. So recreation, the numbers that you see there in terms of reductions would be known day camps would be canceled. Quite frankly, if you have social distancing, it's going to be hard to have day camps, similar to schools being closed. It's difficult with with children. So basically what we'd see here is normally we hire 9 summer students. We would only be hiring 2. And those 2 would provide the summer recreation program in a different way. And you have a report on your agenda that kind of outlines how that would look. But it wouldn't be our traditional summer program for day camp. Summer programs, as I mentioned, they would all be canceled, and we'd be providing those in a different way, a little bit more online and virtual and non-structured. Fall winter programs, we anticipate that those will be impacted as well for the same reasons, and that we'd have to deliver those in a different way, so service level reduction there. And the outdoor pool would remain closed. There are options for the pool, and that's provided to you in another report as well. Festivals and events, the service level reductions there were Canada Day canceled, Music on the Riverbank canceled, and Christmas on the Lahave. Shooting in the dark a bit on that one, but we're assuming that large gathering such as that event wouldn't be able to occur and have to be canceled. Transit, reduced hours until June 30th, and no fares for 6 months because of the social distancing requirements. And the capital program, and this is where the delay and the recall of seasonals come in. So with the cut you see, we had them recalled in mid-June. But what that does is it slows down our ability to implement our capital program as business as usual, right? Because we don't have a full complement of staff doing parks and capital programs. If council wishes to proceed as business as usual on the capital side, then seasonals need to come back sooner than that. And it's suggested that it'd be the day after Labor Day weekend, so next week. I've given you the list of capital projects that our public works crew would be working on. So we wouldn't be contracting this work out. We would be using them. So you can see that that list of projects: crosswalk improvement, inflow infiltration, sidewalks, pine crest storm, pavement management, guardrail rail replacement, bridge rail replacement, the town-owned decorative lights, the fire hall pump test, King Street pedestrian crossing, pump station number 10, Forest Main, Headville Sewer, and Bridgewater School crosswalk. Those are what our crew would be working on, and if we continue the delay in the recall of seasonals, those are the projects that would be slowed down a little bit. But I want to caution council that there are other factors that will affect our ability to complete capital projects on time this fiscal year. That has to do with manufacturing and supply and delivery of products. With the pandemic, things have shut down, things have slowed down, so we're not getting what we order as quickly as we would normally see. So those things, you can't do the project without the materials, so those things could impact that as well. And we will have to kind of just monitor that as we go throughout the construction season. And council's also directed that we come back and we do a check-in with you on capital projects as well. So that's on our agenda. We're looking at May this year, but we'll be coming back every month and saying, here's the projects we want to start this month, yay or nay to that. So those are the service level reductions that you would encounter by having those expenditure cuts. An alternative approach for council is you might not, as we say, the phase-in plan is not known. It hasn't been shared with municipalities, so we don't know what that plan will do in terms of can we open the pool? Don't know. We're assuming not, but that plan could change that. You could defer making a decision on items like that until June, say. At some point, it's too late because there's preparatory work that has to be done to have the service ready. You'll shorten your season for getting revenue to offset your fixed costs. So at some point, it just won't make sense to be too costly to provide. But you could delay a decision until June on the pool and come back with that. It's not recommended that you defer a decision on the capital program because we do need to get started on some of these capital projects. So we do need to know what your intentions and expectations are with respects to capital. If you want it business as usual, in terms of speed, understanding there's external factors, then we need to start looking at our staff complement there. The other thing you could do is, another option you have is, instead of doing the, as I call it, the death by 1,000 cuts in terms of making small adjustments here and there, you could look at recovering your non-tax revenue loss through your operating reserve. So you could say business as usual, let's not make all these adjustments, and we'll fund through our operating reserve. And the operating reserve is put in place for situations like this, where you have unexpected events that you haven't budgeted for that are out of your control. So it wouldn't be unheard of to look at your operating reserves for this type of thing as well. So that's it.
Okay. That's a lot.
Uh-huh.
Questions from council?
Andrew here.
Go ahead.
So, Tammy, I assume engineering will struggle or Public Works will struggle a fair amount with some of these capital projects if we don't, in essence, stay status quo or business as usual, given the perhaps long lead time they're going to need to prepare for some of these things, which could then be a waste of time for them. Does that make sense? If we say, pause on that now.
I think it might be project specific. I don't know, Larry, do you have any comment on that?
I'm not sure I fully understood the question.
Like, if, as an example, Hebbill Sewer, you're going to need a significant amount of lead time, I would expect, to prepare and gear up towards going on site. And I guess that probably might even be now, I don't know. So without us saying just business as usual and we're going to hope for the best, is that going to be a real struggle for you if we say, well, this month you're going to pause, next month you're going to, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that particular project, there's like 3 components to it. There's the design component, which of course will proceed and we'll plan for anyhow, but there'll also be the ordering of the materials and getting that equipment here, which may have, delivery could be an issue. And then there's actually the construction of that project. So, staff are going to continue to work at design and planning. And really, some of these projects with the delivery of materials, that could be a problem as far as completing the project, I guess, for this construction season. But certainly, the sooner we get at it, the better. And I think we're going to probably talk about the capital program a little later in this meeting as well. And we're going to suggest that if council is aware of projects not necessarily listed for now, but in the future, that if they're aware of projects that they know they want to proceed or defer, that we know now, because it definitely is a benefit.
Do you get any, if I could, do you get any sense that external firms are hungry for work, or are they just sort of, continuing on as per normal with construction projects, or do you have that intel, so to speak?
It seems like the engineering side of it is still proceeding, but actual contractors that are doing site works is not back, I'll say, in full force as of yet. There's indications that they're starting to think about coming back. I mean, there are some things that are being done, but certainly the contractors that are out there, they're not back in full force, or they're just thinking about coming back. But we haven't had great weather either. It's been a poor spring.
More questions?
Yeah, Mayor Mitchell, it's Bill McGinnis.
Go ahead, Bill.
No, a question to Larry. Larry, we had a fair number of capital projects carried forward from last year. Are those in progress or going to be able to be completed?
I know we're finishing off one in particular. I don't think there were that many other projects that weren't completed. So I believe we're pretty well finished.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Frazier, I believe you had a question.
Yes, I did, please. Just asking with regards to procurement and getting RFP process, do we foresee any change in that process with, for example, we've got a fair number of with snow, sidewalk plow and other things that we're looking to purchase. I'm just wondering if there, Tammy anticipates any change in that delay of.
I guess it would depend on whether or not we're able to get it delivered. Like, we can order it, do the RFP, have the bid, but the delivery time might be the issue there.
Okay.
Yeah, it depends
okay.
on the piece too. Yeah.
Just ensuring that we're allowing for extra time for that as well. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I know further on we're going to talk about the capital budget and some the items. Do we want to go ahead or not? To me, I'm just going to say that anything that is road work or disrupts people moving, now is probably the better time to do it because there's fewer people out. So I think there's an advantage to doing some of this work for the public works crews, especially as they're out working, trying to socially distance from the public. Now there's fewer public out, so I think there's a good opportunity to do it now and have a smaller disruption.
And I think the message there is that if council's expectation is let's get out there full force, Larry needs to have park staff back to do that.
Okay, so this thing, I'll go back to opening up the list. So there's a bunch of scenarios in there, but really we have to figure out what council wants to do. If council wants to start ramping back up, then we're going to need to advise staff to start recalling people. Does council have concerns about ramping up? And we'll talk about the pool and things in a minute, but just in terms of the list here that's been put in place.
Andrew here. I mean, I have no concerns about ramping back up, only because this is typically work, and looking at the list, it's all work that needs to be done. And I feel very confident in the fact that the federal government and even the provincial government are probably going to come back to us. Federal government was coming back to us with new money, but the provincial government coming back to us perhaps with more money. I think it's time to ramp up, honestly.
Your Worship?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I think 82% of our capital budget is dealing with Exit 12 and industrial park, wastewater, and paving and energized bridgewater. So all those projects are operation critical. So I agree with Andrew. Like I say, over 82% of that budget is where those 4 items lie. So we should be working at those now versus later.
I would, Bill McGinnis, I would echo Andrew's comments as well. I think the federal government is going to open up eventually, and it's probably going to be sooner rather than later. So I think we should proceed. So
that works on the project side, but in terms of the operational side, where we have, Tammy's presentation lays it out literally in black and white. So if day camps, if we still are requiring physical separation between people, how do you run a day camp that's not a virtual day camp? How do you open the pool if you have to somehow be responsible to keeping people 2 meters apart? And it does get more complicated when you have children that may not understand the rules in place, and so it gets harder to manage. So again, we'll talk about the capital side stuff on the capital side. I'm not hearing anyone opposed to moving forward with recalling park staff to get those crews up and running to start on the project by project work. But Tammy, you're looking for some direction. I know some of it doesn't have to be tonight, but some direction in terms of operational items, right?
Yeah, and the so as I say, the pool, you may say we want to wait a few weeks and see if we do hear anything about the phase-in plan and is it a possibility? Recreation program, we just don't see how that's possible with social distancing as well. But you could hold off a little bit.
And we've got a few municipalities that have in Nova Scotia that have already said no or closed up.
That's right. I've talked to a few that have just said we've had to make the call. So no recreation programming in the traditional way this summer. No day camps, those types of things. So you wouldn't be alone to make that decision if you felt comfortable making that tonight. The key is that our projections are $542,000 of lost revenue. So when we created the budget, we thought we were going to have enough revenue to offset expenses, and I'm telling you, you're not. So how do we want to deal with that in any way? And so if, like, for instance, seasonal, if we're going to recall them back, then I'll reduce that number. Maybe we pull more from operating reserve, or you give me direction to go try to find another 40,000 somewhere else. All these numbers will add up to that number that you need to cut.
May I make a comment? It's Jennifer.
Of course, yes, Jennifer.
Even if things start to open back up and we could open the pool at some point and we could open summer programming, the more we delay, the more uncertainty there is for people. So those who are trying to plan for childcare for the upcoming summer, who are planning activities and so on for their families. And I think the earlier we can give them notice of what is going to happen, the better. And the reality is we wanted to keep the tax rate where it is because we know people are going through a difficult time. It's difficult for the town too. And I think that as much as I really hate to reduce the level of services, we take a great deal of pride in the level of service we offer. I think this is a year where we have to find cost savings, whether, 2 months down the road, somebody says you can open up the pool. I think we have to keep it closed to save some expense money and get through this year, unfortunately. But for the capital projects, I can see taking that from the operating reserves. I think that's a good plan of action.
Okay, other comments on that?
This is Cheryl. I'll just comment that I'm in conflict of interest with regards to decisions on the outdoor pools. So,
yeah, we'll keep the pool. Let's keep the pool items separate and we'll circle back to that one. So let's talk about recreation right now. Summer programming. I mean, we can delay this, but to Councillor McDonald's point, the longer you delay it, the more people are waiting and unknown. And I'm assuming, Tammy, if we said tonight, listen, we can't go ahead with day camps, but we don't foresee a way to have the physical distancing in place, and on June 8th, for example, Dr. Strang says, for some reason you don't need the physical distancing in place, you can go ahead with recreation. We might have a delay, but we could change our position and try to scramble, no?
Well, it's going to be difficult because we could try our best. And one of the things that staff are doing right now is they're working on how to deliver recreation in a different way, right? So they're looking at that virtual and that unstructured type of activity as outlined in Jessica's report. If mid-June we get word that we no longer have to have that social distancing requirement, then we've got to recruit students. So we've got to get all that stuff underway, and then they got to develop the programming. So it will push things out quite a bit, and then you're left wondering how many weeks of program delivery are you actually going to be able to provide. To Councillor McDonald's point, at that point, people have made alternative arrangements. So there's. I don't know, Jessica, if you and Ruth talked about or Diana, sorry, talked about a cutoff date for when's your drop dead to know about recreation programming?
We haven't set a firm date on that, but we would prefer to know sooner rather than later. It would be very hard, say early to like mid-June, to pull together a robust summer program. Not to mention that this year we had been planning to have our day camp based out of the LCLC, and that facility will not be available. So we would also be in a scramble, not only to find staff, but to find a facility in which we would be able to, provide adequate space, whatever those space requirements may be for staff and participants at that time. So we do have some concerns.
Mm.
I'll also add, if I could, not just making sure that the families have time to plan for what they're going to do with children and participation in activities. The day homes and childcare providers need time to plan. It sounds like there's a lot of restrictions. Their staffing numbers have changed, their ratios and so on. They really need time to know how many children they're looking at accepting this summer, and how to create the staffing numbers, and how to create that programming where, playgrounds could be off limits and so on. So I really think if we keep delaying, we're really putting everyone in a bad position around that as well, because it does take a number of children out of the daycare facilities and day homes and things that are now going to be positions required.
Fair point. I actually was thinking about that as well. I was going to say, we have a number of different facilities and organizations in our community that also provide the type of environment that we would be providing through the day camps. So, it'll be a very changed environment this summer. We already know that. We're not entirely sure how changed it will be, but we feel that it would be tough for us to scramble from a staff position. And we know that it's not just this summer that we're considering how to deliver recreation programs. We also have to look towards the fall as well. So in addition to finding it probably challenging to pull something together that would be safe and well planned, it's also then having some of that time to provide a new pathway to the future of recreation, and having some of that time this summer would enable us to do that.
And the proposal that is in place is still to have 2 staff to provide some kind of virtual programming.
Correct. And that also means, if restrictions get lifted, then perhaps some of that programming becomes some in-person type of programming, but not the week-by-week day camp programming that we've offered before. So it might be a drop-in half day. It could be a whole variety of things, and it would give us time. If we make a decision now, that will give staff time to make that plan and have that flexibility to do that. But to roll out, we would normally have our staff started already in planning day camps. So we would have our day camp coordinator and our summer manager would have started last week or the week before in planning that. So there is a lot of work that goes into getting those day camps off the ground.
Okay, so let's just talk about just the summer day camps. Oh my gosh, it breaks my heart. I'm not hearing anyone really strongly in favor of going forward. Yeah.
Mayor Mitchell, Bill McGinnis. In your conversations with other mayors or maybe even people in the province, has there been any talk about opening up certain things in certain regions? For instance, the Western Zone have not had a case since April 23rd. And so, for all intents and purposes, we have not had any new cases whatsoever. And I'm just wondering if, a daycare could be opened up down here, or a program could be had.
So
did you have any discussions about that?
So yes and no. So yes, we've had this discussion at the municipal level, but as recently even as Friday's press conference, I believe, Dr. Strang made it clear that he has no intention of loosening restrictions in one zone, because as he put it, all that would mean is people from the zone so let's use the central zone because that seems to be where all the cases are these days. If they loosen restrictions for day camps in the western zone, people from the central zone would all file into our zone and send their kids, and now you'd have a potential spread in the western zone. If you opened up pools in Cape Breton, then you'd have kids from parents all shuffling up there. So he did say he's not opening it up zone by zone. It'll all be at once or not at all.
Not to say I totally agree with him.
Well, we've had the same comment. Like, I understand where he's coming from, but we've had the same concern at the municipal level of, especially down at the end of the province. If you look at Yarmouth, I don't think people are driving from the central zone to Yarmouth to put their kids in a day camp, but that was from the chief medical officer that he wasn't doing that.
Well, hearing that, I don't think we have much choice but to camp.
No.
Your Worship?
Yes, Wayne.
Yeah, I support the CISO's stand on the operational side. I think the reason I was talking was to get capital running. And to get the capital opened up, if we have to bring the seasonal workers back to do the work that our workers are doing now, then I think that was the whole intent, not to bring back all these programs.
Yeah,
I know the pool's a separate item, but we need to get this capital work started.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about capital we're going to finish with the day camps. We're going to go down to the pool because I know we have someone that has to declare a conflict with the pool, and then we'll deal with the capital items. Yeah, so let's deal with the day camp. I'm not hearing anyone saying that there's a way to really go ahead with these day camps. Tammy, do you need a motion to that effect, or is it just a staffing decision by your team?
What I'd be looking for is an agreement for the budget reduction. So if there's things that we want to pull out and not make a decision on, we just pull those out, and then you would just agree to the reductions, which have implications for service levels.
Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll have to move down the list. We'll go down to the pool. We'll talk about that. Then we'll go back to this because I know we have to kind of separate those two. So we're gonna move on to the discussion with the outdoor pool.
Mayor Mitchell, I'm going to declare a conflict there as well. I've got a potential employee of the pool or a pool organization. So. Okay.
So thank you, Deputy Mayor.
That's not me.
And Councillor Vergier, I know that you had stated you have a conflict, so we'll just get you to mute your microphones, and then we'll go down to outdoor pool. So I will say that I had a conversation with one of the naming sponsors of the pool because the question came up of if we don't open the pool this year, this is the last year of the sponsorship from the Barracudas United Way and O'Regan Subaru. So the question was, if we don't open the pool, really, what are they paying for? So would they be willing to just extend it 1 year? So they wouldn't give us the money for this year, obviously, if the pool was closed. Would they do it next year? And so they all did reply favorably and say, yes, of course, that makes sense. So we would just extend everything 1 year. And then their final sponsorship year would be next year. So, I appreciate their openness and willingness to do that. But just like the day camps, we have an issue here, and that is how do you operate a pool if you don't know if the physical distancing in place? Now we can, correct me if I'm wrong, staff, we can delay this a couple more weeks, this decision, if we think there's going to be more information. But again, if there's no more information, you're kicking the ball down and making it a little bit more difficult for people.
We absolutely can delay a decision on this one. We need 10 days to get the pool operational. And so staff feel that, we'd rather take as much time as, getting close enough to that to see if it might be possible. Because if there's one thing we could offer this summer, then perhaps it could be swimming at the outdoor pool. I know that some other jurisdictions, not here in Nova Scotia, have just started providing guidance around how to have and achieve social distancing and disinfection processes for outdoor pools. So we just got some information earlier today from the Department of Communities, Culture and Heritage about some information that came from BC about how they're doing things with regards to pools. So I feel that we could wait a little bit more on this because there's not as much organization required. The facility's already there. With day camps, we're looking for a place to offer the day camps in addition to all the programming versus the pool. We know how to run the pool. And so we also know there'll be we feel confident we'd be able to find enough lifeguards since there are so few summer jobs, unfortunately, for our students this summer.
So are you thinking this could be delayed as far as June 8th, or is that too late? Are you looking just for two weeks?
As far as June 8th.
Is that kind of the last date?
Possibly even later, depending.
When do we normally open the pool, Jessica?
The pool isn't opened until July 1st.
Yeah.
And that's why in my report. Yeah. So it's not normally open until July 1st. So we need 10 days. We need from July 20th or June 20th approximately to get the pool ready. And I know we've been looking to Swim Nova Scotia to see what they're saying around the outdoor competitive swim season. There hasn't been any information coming from Swim Nova Scotia or even Swim Canada yet around, so nobody's made a call yet. Everybody's hopeful because it is outdoors. I mean, of course, there's the indoor facilities that are impacted as well, but you know, we're hopeful that perhaps in the next month or so we'd get some direction on that.
So what about staffing requirements? Your pool manager, you've got
pool manager. We've already spoken to the staff that we've had the past number of years. So, you know, we feel that we would be able to by June 8th, probably. I guess that's the first council meeting in June. Yeah, we should have a sense. Yeah, to get the pool operational, we need 10 days, but to get the staffing in place, we would probably need a bit more time than that.
Okay, so if we put this back on the agenda for June 8th, anyone on council object to that?
Just a question before we move on from it.
Yes.
We would have to, if we decided to keep the pool open, is it 57,000 that we'd have to take out of our operating reserves to kind of cover that expense?
Well, no, because there's a revenue line associated with the pool as well of around what 43, I think it was, or
okay,
43.
Yeah, so the sponsorship would still kick in then if we open the pool.
Okay.
The sponsorship would. There's a few options that I put in that report, so we can bring that back on June 8th, discuss some of those. So there's an option, sort of a limited opening option where it's public swim, or possibly if the outdoor competitive summer swim league is in session, then perhaps with a little bit of the Barracudas as well. That would net out at a cost of around $10,000 to $11,000 versus a net out cost of, for the business as usual case, the net cost is about $18,000. So there's the cost, the expenses, but then there's revenues that come in as well.
Yeah, so it's
that. Sorry, Tammy.
It's the net cost that we'd have to make up.
Yes.
In some way, because it wouldn't reduce the loss of revenue by the same amount. So.
No, and we would assume that if the pool is open, then the sponsorship agreement stands.
Yeah.
If the pool is closed, what do we do? Do we ask them to pay that sponsorship but not have the pool open? Right.
Okay, so I'm not hearing any objection from anyone on council to bringing that back to the June 8th meeting. And obviously, if we get any indication before then from the province, then we would, like if they say, you know what, outdoor pools can be open and away you go, then obviously then we can just, we'll move with that. Is that okay? I just want to make sure anyone who does have any objection to that speaks. No? Okay. So let's go down to we'll call the deputy mayor and Councillor Frigier back, and then we'll go down to the capital budget monthly review, I think, Tammy? Because we need to deal with that one as well, because that determines whether you're recalling your staff, right?
There are some on that list that our public works staff would be working on. So just a reminder that the public works staff that we'd be assigning to the projects we'd be assigning them to, I've listed in the report on the budget cuts, but some of them are listed in the May startup in Larry's report, so we should look at that. Yeah.
Okay. So just right off the bat, I would suggest that we the crosswalk by the junior high school can be removed at this point. I had a conversation with the director of the South Shore Center for Education. I know I probably messed up what it's called now. And so council was looking for some cost sharing or some discussions on some input from the board, and the answer was that this was, I believe, the first he had heard about it, so he wanted more time to talk about that. So I would say that's probably a safe one to remove for now. So that's $25,000. And when I say remove, I mean remove from May, right? So we're just kind of pushing it down a little bit. So if the board comes back, council can look at it again. Are there any other items in the May list? The June list is going to come to us in 2 weeks, just so everyone's aware. But I heard from council that, you know, we have to get this work done. Now is kind of the time to get it done. Are there any other items in that list that you think need to come off? Not hearing anything.
David,
Yes, Wayne.
what about those items on the North Barcade there? We're talking for near $300,000 for railings and aesthetic improvements. I know they're on the June list, but as far as I'm concerned, if we don't have to do them this year, I would just sooner see them not done if we'd use that money somewhere else.
Yeah, so that's something. If we need more information on that before it comes back to us in 2 weeks, the impacts of not doing those, and the impacts of doing those beyond just the financial, then I would suggest emailing the CAO to see if we delay that doing those projects, what that means.
Mm-hmm.
I think a few of us had the same question. I'm not really. Oh, sorry.
So just on that, there was also it was in our operating budget that we approved a parking study. And I believe that was kind of a question that council had about what are the parking needs now and what we forecast for the future. And does that have any implications for any decisions you make with respect to the North Parking? And if it does, you're going to be pushing that out quite a bit. It might actually come off the list and be done next year because we have to go to proposal call for the parking study, so that will take some time.
Right. So I think that's probably where Councillor Thorburn was going. If we're going to do a parking study that says you don't need, you're going to make some changes downtown, do you want to put money into the parkade and then find out you're going to do something different?
Exactly.
Okay. So anything on the May list? I haven't heard anyone wanting to take anything off other than the crosswalk. So with that, Tammy, and hearing that it looks like the day camps are a no-go, the in-person day camps, I should say. Do you have enough information to go forward?
Well, yeah, I guess we're assuming summer programming is the same way as well as fall and winter, that we're going to have to look at delivery in a different way. So the reductions are in the operating budget for that.
But you don't need a decision on fall and winter right now, though, do you?
Well, I guess that the further we go into the year, fall and winter, we're making that assumption. If we're able to provide them in the normal way, then we'll do that, and we'll have to look at our budget and make adjustments. Summer's fine. We'll be changing that because we have to plan our summer program now. And the Christmas on La Have is another one that we'll circle and bring back to you because we just don't know. We're making the assumption. Council's good with the reduced transit hours all the way till the end of June. And then everything else is pretty much going to happen. The benefit holiday we'll talk about, but assuming that goes on. Delay of internal control study is one that I'm suggesting or proposing could be an option for this year, given everything that's going on with the COVID-19 financing program and all that. A new director coming in, it might be something that we want to put off for until next year. So that would be $12,000. And as I say, are you good with the assumption that all of the park events are canceled for the summer as well? Because that would involve social gatherings, because those numbers are in there. And if you're good with that, then we'll use this as a guide because we wouldn't want to spend money in these categories if they're earmarked for reduction to help offset that non-tax revenue. In terms of delaying the seasonal, I'm hearing you recall them now. So there's that would mean that there's another $40,000 that we'll have to make up because it's not offsetting the non-tax revenue. So the options for council there are to send us away and tell us to find that and do some deeper dives, or we can look at the operating reserve and use that as the backup to that 40,000.
What's council's preference on that?
I'd like to hear from Larry, see what he thinks. I think we should bring them back if it's affecting our capital budget and getting work done. So.
I think there's definitely benefits bringing staff back and getting at those capital programs as quick as we can, especially with not knowing the potential for delays in supplies and stuff on the other end. So I could foresee that we might be asking council to carry more projects forward to next year with the complexities of what's going on, especially if we don't get at them as soon as we can.
Bill McGinnis, I would tend to agree with Wayne's comment, and if we have to, we can fund it out of the operating reserve if we can't find enough to make it up.
Yep.
All right. So what I have, just for summary here, pool, Christmas on LaHave, and fall winter programming, we will defer any decisions on.
Yep.
We're going to recall seasonal next Tuesday, which would be or as soon as possible.
Yep.
I'm assuming they'd want some notice. And then the difference, we will fund from the operating reserve, accepting all the other reductions that we have presented here.
Yes.
Okay.
Everyone in agreement?
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
Good to me.
Okay. Do you need a motion for that, Tammy? You're good to go?
I would like a motion. They're like, what's the motion going to say?
So, most of it is what you're recommending in your report.
Yeah, with the exception of the pool, Christmas on LaHave, and fall winter programming, that we will put the reductions, including the service level reductions that are proposed.
And removal of the school crosswalk at this time.
I was just dealing with my report.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Someone prepared to move that?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Thorburn, seconded by Councillor McGinnis. Further discussion? Hearing none. Yay or nay, Councillor McGinnis?
Yay.
Councillor Frazier?
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn?
Yay.
Councillor McDonald?
Yay.
Councillor Graves, are you back?
Yay. Yeah.
Perfect. Crystal clear. Deputy Mayor Tanner?
Yay.
And I'm in favor as well. So you have your direction on that, and then we'll deal with the pool in a few weeks. So you want us to touch back on the capital project list there?
Yep.
So I didn't hear anyone having anything in the May list except for the crosswalk to come out. So do you need a motion to approve that list less that crosswalk?
So moved.
Oh, you're muted, Tammy.
You're delaying a decision on the crosswalk. That's what you're proposing to do, and to proceed with everything else.
Yes.
Then I think you've already passed the motion to approve the capital budget. So we'll just take that direction to know that we're going to delay the crosswalk in front of the junior high, and just make a note to bring that back a little later in the fiscal year if we're able to fit it in.
Perfect. Okay. All right. If there's nothing else on that, we'll go down to provincial funding opportunity applications. Is that
you? Audrey?
Oh, perfect.
Okay, so staff is requesting 2 resolutions from council supporting the submission of funding applications to 2 provincial programs that are available at the moment. The first one is the Provincial Capital Assistance Program. And in this one, we actually have 2 projects that we think would probably be appropriate. This program focuses on water and wastewater treatment, along with sanitary or stormwater studies or construction projects. So the first project, which we thought would be very applicable and currently in our budget, is the pump station condition assessment project at $100,000. This program could potentially fund up to 50% of that, and we're already underway with that project. So we would apply and let them know it is already underway. And the second project that we would also put into this program is the town master plan, which is also included in the budget, and it's not currently underway. It basically concentrates on town-owned lands and lands in the Glen Allen area and north of Highway 103. It would include planning for roads, water, wastewater, and stormwater infrastructure. So we thought that one would also qualify and put both programs forward. Any questions on that one before I move to the next program?
No.
Okay. And the second one that we're also looking for a resolution to submit an application on is the Beautification and Streetscape Program. This program requires a project that concentrates on beautifying your town areas that would help promote tourism. So the one that staff felt was appropriate for this would be the town-owned decorative light program at a cost of $300,000, and that focuses on installing new decorative lights, banner holders, flower basket hooks, and it's basically on King Street, Veterans Memorial Bridge to Maple. It includes 2 parks, Shipyards Landing and Mariners Landing, and comes with the added upgrade of going to LED lights in that area.
Any questions on that? Very straightforward. Is someone prepared to make a motion on the first one?
I'll make a motion, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Bergier.
So the first motion, that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of staff as contained in document 20-086 to submit 2 provincial capital assistance program PCAP applications, with the priority 1 application being for the pump station condition assessment at a cost of $100,000, and priority 2 application for the town master plan study at a cost of $80,000.
Thank you. Seconded by?
I'll second that, Andrew.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Tanner. Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go around the room again. Councillor McGuinness?
Yay.
Councillor Bergier?
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn?
Yay.
Councillor McDonald?
Yay.
Councillor Graves?
Yay.
Deputy Mayor Tanner?
Yay.
And I'm in favor, so motion is carried. Someone ready to make the next motion?
I can make
Yes,
the motion if you would like.
Oh, yes, Councillor Bergier.
Yes, the Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of staff as contained in document 20-086 to submit an application under the Beautification and Streetscaping Program for the town-owned decorative light project at a cost of $300,000.
Thank you. Seconded by?
I'll second it then.
Councillor Thorburn seconded that. All those in favor, Councillor McGuinness?
Yay.
Councillor Bergier?
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn?
Yay.
Councillor McDonald?
Yay.
Councillor Graves?
Yay.
Deputy Mayor Tanner?
Yay.
I'm in favor. Those are both carried. Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Mayor Mitchell, can I
Yes.
ask a question, please?
Of course.
Why would we need permission from council to apply for funding?
It's a requirement of the funder that we have a motion of council
Really?
to support those projects going in for funding. Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you.
It's like giving ourselves a letter of support. Okay, the next item is the request to lease parking spaces for outdoor patio in the town center parking lot.
Mayor Mitchell, I'm going to declare a conflict on this one as well.
Okay, thank you. I'll
Okay.
turn that over to staff.
All right. So we received a request from Devin Fraser with Firkenstein Brewery to lease 3 spaces in the town center parking lot for the purposes of an outdoor patio, and it would be accessory to the brewery for the purposes of serving patrons. There was a drawing that was provided to kind of show you where that is, so they're closer to the sidewalk where the spaces are that they would be looking to lease. This is before council tonight to determine whether or not council has an interest in leasing these spaces. We now own that town center parking lot, so the choice is yours. Our land use bylaw does not clearly provide for the outdoor patio on that lot. It's suggested that we do amendments to land use bylaw, which would be in the general provisions that would essentially treat it as an accessory use when it's an outdoor patio that extends into a sidewalk or a portion of a parking lot, that we would consider that to be similar to what we would consider a sidewalk cafe. And then we would ensure that it met the requirements of the sidewalk cafe bylaw, which then requires that we do amendments to the sidewalk cafe bylaw to enable it to be considered a sidewalk cafe when it's on a parking lot, as opposed to a sidewalk or a portion of a public street. So really kind of housekeeping amendments in a way, because we'd never owned a parking lot that abutted a use that would want to extend into our parking area. So to grant the request, you'd have to do those bylaw amendments. The matters that council may wish to consider: you are looking at doing a parking needs study, present and future. The last one was done in 2014. And from that, the South Parkade was removed. And since that time, you've experienced development on King Street, and we're looking at new development on King Street with the BMO, the former Home Hardware building, and a number of other places that could have an impact on parking. So the study will help council determine what your needs are, and if leasing 3 parking spaces so they couldn't be used for parking, if that would be of concern or an issue. That study is going to be done this year, and those developments that are being proposed will be probably a few years out in total, so there is some time. If you want to consider the lease, staff's recommendation is that you look at a multi 2 or 3 year lease, and then option for renewal once you know the results of that parking study and you see how development's occurring on King Street as well. And as I mentioned, the land use bylaw and sidewalk cafe bylaw require amendments to allow that. And the farmers market uses this lot. So you would, we've understood from the applicant that the farmers market doesn't have any concerns with the lease of these 3 spaces, but the suggestion of staff is just to have that confirmed in writing from the farmers market that they have no concerns with that. And Larry noted that there might be a catch basin within the area of where the 3 spaces are, so they may actually have to move where they want to have the spaces or do some modifications. But we would have to determine that, and the owner would be, or the applicant would be responsible for any types of site modifications that would be required. So the lease, there would be a cost to prepare the lease and staff time to do that, which would be legal. And as I mentioned, the recommendation is that council give direction to staff to proceed to take steps to enter into the lease for a portion of 685 King Street with the applicant, Devin Fraser from Birkensteins, as requested, subject to a lease with terms agreeable to both parties, including a lease term of 2 years, renewable by agreement of both parties, of which consideration will be given to the results of the parking study that's to be completed this year. Confirmation that the farmers market agrees with the lease area being excluded from their usage agreement for 685 King Street parking lot. Amendments to the land use bylaw and amendments to the sidewalk cafe bylaw to enable this to occur.
All right, questions from members of council?
I've got one, David.
Yes, go ahead.
So how do they bring beverages from inside the establishment to the patio? Are they going to walk them out on the sidewalk?
I don't have that level of detail. I don't know if Jessica, if you've seen that.
I believe there is a side door. I'm trying to recall, but I believe that
there is a side. Yeah, there is a side door on that parking lot side towards the back.
Yeah.
And you can have a side door fronting onto town property, like a parking lot. That's allowed.
Yes,
I don't see why it wouldn't.
It's an exit to the building.
An exit. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
Would you like a motion?
I would, yes, please, Councilor McDonald.
I would move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater direct staff to proceed to take the steps required to enter into a lease agreement for a portion of 685 King Street with Devin Fraser Firkensteins, as requested, subject to the following. Number one, lease terms agreeable to both parties, including a lease term of 2 years, renewable by agreement of both parties, of which consideration will be given to the results of the parking study to be completed in 2020-2021. Confirmation that the farmers market agrees with the lease area being excluded from their usage agreement for 685 King Street parking lot. And 3, amendments to the land use bylaw enable an outdoor patio that extends beyond a property boundary into a sidewalk or town-owned parking space as an accessory use to the subject and subject to the requirements of the sidewalk cafe bylaw. And 4, amendments to the sidewalk cafe bylaw to enable a sidewalk cafe on a town parking lot. For a town-owned parking lot.
Thank you. Seconded by?
I will second that.
Councillor McGinnis, thank you. Further discussion? Hearing none. Questions being called. Councillor McGinnis, yea or nay?
Could I ask one question on that, if I may?
Yes, go ahead.
There is a crosswalk work going on there, I think fairly soon.
Yeah, it's in the capital that we just said to go ahead with.
Will that affect this at all?
This would be a separate area.
Okay.
We are seeking confirmation from the owner or the tenant, and I guess the building owner as well, that they want to proceed with a sidewalk cafe in the front of their business as well. Yeah, which those crosswalk modifications will facilitate. But my understanding is they're looking at they intend to go ahead with the side. Not too sure if it'll happen this season or next, but that's why we're suggesting a 2-year lease, so that if the slowdown this year impacts their ability to proceed with the construction of their outdoor patio along the side, they'll have another year to do that. And in terms of the front sidewalk cafe, we're getting confirmation from them what their intentions are there.
My vote is yay.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Frazier?
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn?
Yay.
Councillor McDonald?
Yay.
Councillor Graves?
Yay.
And I am also in favor, and I am excited that there's the possibility of another kind of sidewalk outdoor place to go in Bridgewater. So it's exciting. We'll welcome the Deputy Mayor back as we go back to our agenda. So RFP 2020-01, supply and delivery of 1 progressive cavity pump and macerator. This sounds like a horrible thing to purchase. I don't even know what it is. But I think Audrey's going to tell us.
Thank you. All right. So in March 2020, staff issued a request for proposals for new progressive cavity and macerator pump for the wastewater treatment plant. And just so you are aware, that is the pumps that basically sends all of our product from one building over to the big digester that we just put the roof on. So critical pieces of equipment. And the macerator does just about what you would think it does.
Okay. Any questions?
You want a motion, Your Worship?
Yes, please, Councillor Thorburn.
I would move that Town Council of the Town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of staff and award RFP 2020-01 supply and delivery of a progressive cavity pump and macerator to wastewater treatment plant to Flowstar Industrial ULC at a cost of $30,348.50 HST included and $27,521.08 net HST.
Thank you. Seconded by?
I'll second that.
By Deputy Mayor Tanner. Further discussion? Hearing none. Councillor McGinnis, yea or nay?
Yay.
Councillor Frazier?
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn?
Yay.
Councillor McDonald?
Yay.
Councillor Graves?
Yay.
Deputy Mayor Tanner?
Yay.
And myself, I am in favor. Motion is carried. We'll go down to fourth quarter reports. So these are great. I love getting I know council loves getting these. So thank you to staff and CAO for putting these together. to turn it over to you, Tammy, if you wanted to, were there any highlights you wanted to run through this, or did you want to take questions? How did you want to go with this?
Well, it was a little late getting to the agenda as well. So perhaps we could, if council wants, we can go through and review them, or we can just present them, give them to you tonight, and then we can put it on the next council meeting if you have any questions.
So that's probably not a bad idea, just because we did just receive them today. So it's not an item that needs a motion or anything, unless like if people have questions because they had to look at it today, then by all means ask. If not, I wouldn't mind adding it to the next agenda just to put that in front of us again. Did anyone have a chance to look at this?
Honestly, I scanned it, but I didn't go too deep.
That's okay.
Yeah, I went into it a little bit too, and awesome job, Tammy. You really understand it, and it looks like we've done a lot of work, and thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll bring this back to the next agenda. Awesome. Okay. Down to business arising and unfinished business. We have second and final reading of the town property bylaw. This has been a long time coming. Questions? This is second reading, so we've kind of gone through this. I don't hear any questions. Is someone prepared to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, Your Worship.
Thank you.
That Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater approve the second reading of the revised town property bylaw as presented in document 20-077A, adopt as bylaw chapter 204, and authorize staff to publish all public notices pursuant to section 168 of the Municipal Government Act.
Okay, seconded by?
I'll second that, Andrew.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Tanner. So there's a change in this, correct? From first reading to second reading?
What do you mean a change?
Was there any changes between first reading and second reading? No, okay. Okay, so we've had a mover and seconder. Councillor McGuinness, yea or nay?
Yay.
Councillor Frazier?
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn?
Yay.
Councillor McDonald?
Yay.
Councillor Graves?
Yay.
Deputy Mayor Tanner?
Yay.
And myself in favor. So this includes the trails, though, does it not?
You have a list of trails that when staff originally presented it, they weren't included in the list.
Right.
You approved
right. So that would be the only change, right?
Yeah, with a different list. That's all. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But you did that before first reading, so.
Oh, okay. I couldn't remember if it's between first and second reading. So good news. The trails are open. Okay. I'll just leave it there. Next item is the interim tax billing due date. So we've had this discussion. I know the public was wondering what would happen. We've had the information from the province in the plan that's been in place. So there'll be more information going to the public on what that means for them and the options that they have. But we're now, we have to officially set the due date. So here is what we're looking for is a motion to set the interim tax bill due date up to June 30th. If someone is prepared to make that motion.
I'll do it if you want.
Yes, please.
I move the Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater approve a due date of June 30th, 2020 for the 2020-21 interim tax bill.
Thank you. Seconded by?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Thorburn. Any questions?
Question called.
Questions being called. Councillor McGuinness, yea or nay?
Yay.
Councillor Frazier?
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn?
Yay.
Councillor McDonald?
Yay.
Councillor Graves? And Deputy Mayor Tanner?
Yay.
And I am in favor. So again, we'll have some information for the public on what their options are for those who are having some hardship due to COVID-19. And I probably should remind the public that the reason I'm going around the virtual council table with the yays or nays is because we're using Microsoft Teams and we can only see 4 people at a time. And sometimes if the microphone's a little sporadic or someone's muted, I might miss what is a yay or nay vote. So again, I miss in-person meetings. I cannot wait to go back to raising hands. Next item is proposed citizen honorarium and reimbursement pilot policy. So this is pertaining to the Energize Bridgewater work that's being done. So this was something that we gave notice of, I believe, at the last meeting.
Yes.
So are there any questions on that? No, I'm not hearing any. Is someone prepared to make a motion?
Sure, I can do that. It's Jennifer.
Thank you.
I would move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater approve the Citizen Honorarium and Reimbursement Pilot Policy as presented in document 20-081 as policy 100 for the town, effective immediately.
Thank you. Seconded by?
I can
I'll second that.
Okay, I heard Councilor Frazier first. Policy 100, I feel like we should celebrate. Any discussion?
Question.
Question being called. Councilor McGuinness?
Yay.
Councilor Frazier?
Yay.
Councilor Thorburn?
Yay.
Councilor McDonald?
Yay.
Councilor Graves?
Yay.
Deputy Mayor Tanner?
Yay.
I'm in favor, so that motion is carried. Thank you. Down to new business. National Resources Canada Low Carbon Community Energy Systems Pilot Collaboration and Agreement. That's exciting. Do we have a staff person who's going to kind of give us a run through on that, or?
Yes, I'll just do a very brief. This is just for information to let you know that shortly after our Smart Cities win and announcement last year, I can't believe it was exactly a year ago today that we found that information out. Shortly after that, I know, we met, there was a meeting with Natural Resource Canada. They reached out and we've been in ongoing discussions with some of their staff. Currently, we're doing some work that they have the ability to help us do the work and partner with us. So it's at no cost to us. There's some staff time, etc. right now. But that was already budgeted for and already accounted for. And it's really to work via one of their representatives on, and for them to really help bring information around more low carbon energy technologies into existing communities. So they're doing a lot of work at NRCan and through their the Ottawa-based CanMet Energy, which is a satellite research center of Natural Resources Canada. And so they're helping, right now they're doing a lot of work on various technology, and they want to help try and connect that technology to communities. And our project, our energy poverty reduction project is a great way to try to work on some of that together. So
wonderful.
That's what it is.
Awesome. Any questions? Okay. Great. Our next item is notice, property tax financing program policy. Tammy, was the plan to run through the presentation today for the public, or is it just to give notice and it's going to come back?
Yeah, we can just give notice. It'll come back to the next council meeting, which would be May 25th. And at that time, that would be when council would formally consider it, so we could do the presentation at that time.
And if I could ask that it be probably towards the front end of the council meeting, just because I think it's important for people to tune in, and maybe after a couple of hours, I don't know, maybe we gain followers, but I think it should be probably front and center. It's pretty important, so if that can just be added. Is someone prepared to make a motion to give notice that this will be coming next meeting?
Will do.
Okay, thank you.
I move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater give notice pursuant to Section 48 of the Municipal Government Act that at the May 25th, 2020 council meeting, council will consider and, if deemed advisable, approve a policy to establish a property tax financing program to provide financial relief to the residential and commercial properties negatively affected by the COVID-19 global pandemic.
Perfect. Seconded by?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Tanner. Discussion?
Question?
Question being called. Councillor McGuinness?
Yay.
Councillor Frazier?
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn?
Yay.
Councillor McDonald?
Yay.
Councillor Graves?
Yay.
Deputy Mayor Tanner?
Yay.
And I'm also yay, so we'll discuss that in 2 weeks. Thank you. And then the last item here is fire truck proposed lease agreement. So this came to our attention, I believe, through our deputy fire chief, who was in conversation with a community that lost some equipment due to a fire, tragically. And so we have a piece of equipment we can lease to them. I don't know if Tammy, do you have more information just to give a little more detail?
Yeah, so it's Shinmacass Fire Department that had a fire and lost a truck. And so we have a truck in engine number 4, which is kind of the reserve truck that we have in the event that we have equipment failures and we need to pull that in. The deputy fire chief and fire chief feel that we'd be okay to loan this to Shinmacass Fire Department. Of course, we'd want to have the ability to recall it if we needed it, if we had some equipment issues ourselves. To do this, we would need to have a lease agreement in place that set out formally some of our expectations with respects to loaning this vehicle. One would be that they have to carry insurance that's satisfactory to us. Given the age of the vehicle, our insurer feels that we should be, looking at replacement value and liability of $10 million, and they've got a list of things that we'd want to make sure they had. We want to have an indemnity clause so that they couldn't make us liable for any damage or injury as a result of them using the truck. Their insurance will cover off if there's any property damage and those types of things or accidents that might happen. They would deal with who takes care of maintenance and repairs while they're using it. What type of training do they need to have? What type of licensing do they need to have? The 11 clauses that you see here, it's pretty rough because it's literally like a last minute thing, and they're eager to get the fire truck, obviously. So I've sent it off to our legal counsel to have this put into a formal lease agreement for them to consider. And so I don't have that for you tonight. So your options really are, is if you're interested in loaning the equipment, you could do a motion that would authorize that, conditional upon the execution of a lease agreement satisfactory to legal counsel. So our lawyers satisfied that it protects us. Or you may wish to have the agreement come back to you prior to approval as well, if you're interested in loaning.
Okay, I'll open the floor up. Questions? Comments?
Yeah, David, they lost their station in all their vehicles in that fire that night. And actually, this unit is not one of our first tow trucks. It's a reserve pumper. So it's not one of our main trucks. It doesn't leave the station that often. It's a reserve. And I certainly would wholly support that and would make a motion that we would get paperwork going as soon as we can to facilitate that truck getting transferred up there.
Okay. Sounds like Councillor Thorburn is, in fact, making a motion to have the agreement done by legal counsel and then executed if they're satisfied. Is that correct, Councillor Thorburn?
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay, is someone prepared to second that?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Graves. Discussion on the motion?
Question.
I just have one suggestion, maybe, just going forward. There must be more than once a year where a fire department is in need of loan of a piece of equipment, not necessarily due to this case where the fire station burned down, but maybe what if 2 trucks break and they just need something? Is there some entity or group that could just have a standard form so that we don't have to, like 6 months from now, if someone else needs to borrow a truck, hopefully it's not 6 months from now, we don't have to go back to legal counsel, get the opinion that there's a standard form. Community A needs to borrow a truck from Community B. Just a suggestion.
Yes, Dave, they could take that to Lunenburg Regional Fire and Emergency Service meeting. That's where all the fire departments come together monthly, and have an MOU drawn up that would allow that. I mean, there's different times that we don't lend the truck, but our trucks are on standby. If somebody else like Lunenburg loses their aerial, we're on automatic page when they get a call for an aerial. So those agreements are already in place, but an MOU would certainly look after that, Tammy, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think the difference here is that we look at mutual aid and those types of things within our region, but going way up to Cumberland County, probably we could have a shell of one. Right now, what we're using is actually a lease agreement that another municipality had prepared by our insurer for loaning of equipment, so that they exist. There's templates out there that other fire departments or municipalities have used. So that's what we're doing. We can always send it to Lunenburg Regional and suggest that they look at some standardized form that could be used for loaning outside of our region to other places within the province.
It would speed this up if it ever happened again, not necessarily between Bridgewater and Cumberland, but if it was, Yarmouth and Bridgewater even, right? So we could just, templates here, somebody approves it. Any further discussion?
Question.
Being called. Councillor McGuinness?
Yay.
Councillor Frazier?
Yay.
Councillor Thorburn?
Yay.
Councillor McDonald?
Yay.
Councillor Graves? Deputy Mayor Tanner?
Yay.
I'm also in favor. Motion is passed. So, Tammy, as soon as that gets the stamp of approval from legal and insurance, then away it goes.
Yep.
And, thank you, Council. Thank you to our Deputy Chief for bringing that to our attention. There's no further business coming before Council. Thank you very much, everyone. That was a lot today. We have an in-camera meeting after, so we're going to adjourn this one, then go back, click the link to the in-camera, and we'll see you in a couple minutes. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, moved by Councillor Thurman, seconded by Deputy Mayor Tanner. We are adjourned. Thank you.